In a statement published on Friday, December 9, 2022, the U.S. Treasury's Office for Foreign Assets Control, acronym OFAC, said after a thorough and, of course, mid-year investigation was sanctioning the right abuses the former Guinean President Alpha Condé, Karim Keita, the son of Mali's former President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, who served as the President of the Security and Service or Defense Commission of the National Assembly, as well as over 30 other members of some foreign countries. As per these sanctions, their assets have been frozen and it bars U.S. citizens from dealing with those involved. The alleged charges involve acts of violence, abduction, torture, serial human rights abuses, amongst others. Today, in the course of this edition of Talking Points, we shall be analyzing the sanctions on key African figures, namely the former Guinean leader as well as Karim Keita. Stay with us. Hello ladies and gentlemen, thank you immensely for joining us on this edition of Talking Points over your Pan-African channel for You Media Africa, where today we're discussing that the United States of America has decided after a thorough and mid-year investigation to sanction some two key African figures. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we shall be analyzing this in the course of this edition. I have as guest this afternoon Mr. NJIX, who is a human rights activist and, of course, a political analyst. Thank you immensely for joining us, sir. Thank you for joining us, sir, Mr. NJIX.
Yeah, thank you very much, NJIX, and thank you, televiewers. It is a pleasure this afternoon to talk about issues that concerns our continent, to look at issues that concerns Africa, and to see what level of hypocrisy, what level of human rights we are talking about.
Thank you immensely for taking out time out of your busy schedule to join us on today's edition of Talking Points. I'm equally joined by Mr. ENEOJO ADIKWU, who is a conflict resolution expert and a senior reporter with the Nigerian Television Authority, acronym NTA Television, based in Lagos. Good day to you, sir. Mr. ENEOJO, thank you immensely for joining us.
Thank you very much.
In order to proceed, we're first going to take this report compiled by the news desk of For You Media Africa. When we come back, we shall get down to analysis. The United States, after a multi-year investigation, has imposed sanctions on more than 40 people and entities for alleged rights abuses from 9 countries. These personalities include Guinea's former President Alpha Condé and Karim Keita, son of former Malian leader Ibrahim Boubacar Keita. In a statement released on Friday, the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, said the announcement was the outcome of a thorough and multi-year investigation. Alpha Condé, who was disposed in a coup in September 2021, has been sanctioned for his connection to the serious human rights abuses. Condé became Guinea's first democratically elected president in 2010 and was re-elected for a controversial third term after a constitutional referendum 10 years on. His government was on several attempts accused of endemic corruption and serious human rights abuses. According to the statement released by the U.S. Embassy in Guinea, Condé's security forces engaged in violence against opposition supporters, and the government arbitrarily arrested and detained opposition members in 2020. Meanwhile, Keita served as the president of the Security and Defense Commission of the National Assembly in Mali from February 2014 until his father was overthrown in an August coup in 2020. The U.S. said he used his position to receive bribes and embezzle government funds and remove other officials who did not support his actions. The statement added that Keita was also alertly involved in the abduction, torture, murder of reporter Birama Touré, who was investigating his involvement in corruption. Individuals and entities from North Korea, El Salvador, Guatemala, Iran, Philippines, Russia, the Tibetan Autonomous Region of China, and elsewhere were also included in the sanctioned list, with their assets being frozen. Ladies and gentlemen, you might have noticed today we're discussing that the United States of America, through its Treasury of Asset Control, has decided to sanction 2 key African figures as well as almost 38 others in, of course, relation to human rights abuses across the world. And ladies and gentlemen, as I earlier mentioned, we have guests here joining us all the way from Cameroon and from Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, having listened to that report, our first channel, there is our first question to you, Mr. Nje Lucas. You are a human rights activist. Having listened to the report, what analysis do you make of the sanction from the United States, given it's not the first, but then in relation to human rights activists? How do you analyze all this?
It is worth noting that Alpha Condé, at a certain point within his tenure, while as the head of the supremacy in Guinea, indeed committed some human rights violations. I think we should be able to say the things the way they are, and we should also bear in mind that we are centered on building Africa. Hence, we should speak out to persons in Africa who feel that power which is given to them by the people was rather made by themselves and not gotten from the people. Alpha Condé was the first democratically elected president in Guinea in 2010, and we should understand that it is a country that had been plagued with several coup d'etats, which of course we are talking about a country that is still fighting, because till date we are yet to see the level of democracy that we do expect in that said country. Notwithstanding, we are saying that what the African continent needs as Pan-Africanists, it is peace, order, serenity, growth, and respect for human rights. Alpha Condé, in his time while as a president, was received by Angela Merkel and other persons out of the African continent. And within this period, though the United States is talking about a multiple-year investigation leading to this decision by the Treasury Office, I want to say that we should not mix things up, because Alpha Condé at a particular point in time was also praised by the Americans. He was received by the Americans. He was praised by the Americans. The Americans, in most cases, would receive you via their ambassadors, and they can equally receive you in their own country. We see the diplomacy at the time that Alpha Condé played. And in all of this, Alpha Condé was not, for any reason, told that he was perpetrating what exactly was not right. But what is quite unfortunate is that after many years, we are talking about 2010, and he was now able to secure another mandate. And he was deposed in September 2021. And later on, several things were now put on the table, citing his human rights abuses, his serial human rights abuses and serial killings, which his thugs perpetrated and were let go at the time, because the interest of the West was not yet put against the West. So most of these things, I am saying that we expect the African Union to take the lead in sanctioning our own. If a child commits, or if a child is found wanted by a parent and is not corrected by that parent, and an outsider comes in to correct that child, it makes the parent to be hypocrites, because it would have meant that the parents do condone to what the child does, and in most cases the child is not by any way causing that particular life of his as a child and that of the family to be at a position where many would see and applaud. It is the same thing that is happening in Africa. So Alpha Condé, I am speaking in the capacity that Alpha Condé, yes, he committed serious human rights violations. There were heinous crimes committed in his time and most of the persons he had in place. But for no reason, the U.S. should be the one to sanction. Why is the U.S. becoming the person to sanction? It is happening the way it is happening because in the past, we have realized that most of our leaders, I don't know if they are being compelled behind us to have their life savings saved in the West, which is usually a tool by the West to come behind it to start correcting them. I am saying that Alpha Condé committed human rights abuses. He violated a lot of the people's rights within his tenure. And of course, the constitutional change that took place in Guinea was not on the bed of roses. Several persons and several heads rolled for that change to be effective because there was an outright denial by the opposition. There was an outright denial by civil society within the same country. There was an outright denial by the people that there should not be any constitutional amendment that would give the opportunity that he did secure before he was now chased to leave the country at the helm. So the hypocrisy, on the other hand, like I said in my introduction, is coming from the West, where once you are doing what they want, they will not support us to take you out until when you must have left that office. And there is something being said. It is said to be alleged human rights abuses from the country. And these countries, according to the United States, to an extent it is an allegation.
Yes.
To an extent it is what they claim to have been a multiple-year investigation. And what we are saying is that if you were to go by what is being published by the Treasury Department of the United States, and why is it the Treasury Department of the United States? It is because it is a department that is in charge of all what foreigners will save in the U.S., of what you have as a president saved in the U.S. I want to borrow a case in Cameroon. Cameroon was suspended from AGOA. And for those who do not know, Cameroon was suspended from AGOA. AGOA, which basically means African Growth and Opportunity Act. And this particular African Growth and Opportunity Act is actually an act that was put in place. It was a piece of legislation that was put in place in May 2000 by the United States. And countries such as Guinea was involved. And Guinea was not suspended like in the case of Cameroon, which I am saying that if you look at the case of Cameroon, Cameroon was suspended in 2020, I think, or 2021. And Cameroon is still under suspension, yet this particular act still invites Cameroon in the African and American African summit, which Cameroon is taking part. There you realize the hypocrisy I'm talking about, which in most cases is not helping the Africans to fight this corruption. So I think that the Americans, they are a party. Now, should we continue to hold these guys without moving forward? The answer is no. The answer is no. It is time for Africans to rise up and elect persons whom they know can protect them. If you look at Alpha Condé in his tenure, some of the guys standing behind him were part of those who, they were part of the people who stood against Alpha Condé and kicked him out. So I want to say that he was deposed by some sanctions. And we must, in this case, realize that the Americans are not speaking for us, for the fact that they will always side with evil And they'll use this evil, which is a skeleton they'll help in putting in your cupboard. Thereafter, they will come behind it to remove you. Yes, Alpha Condé committed lots of human rights violations. Alpha Condé did a lot that we have to stand against. As a human rights defender, we do not support these things. We cannot condone to these things. But we are not saying that the sanctions coming from America should make us happy. Rather, we should see it as a blow onto the African Union. The African Union is doing nothing. It must not be coming from the West. We will be looking at Karim Keita in a moment, but I think it was good for our viewers to note that Alpha Condé should not become a bad man being propagated or being protected by the Americans. We should be able to say the right things because it will enable us in stamping them out.
Thank you immensely for that brilliant introduction there. I'd like to pass the mic now to the floor, rather, to Mr. ENEOJO ADIKWU. Now, given this decision was taken by the United States, which according to them, they say is after thorough investigation. Now, what role, as your co-panelist stated, the African Union is not really doing anything. What role can other African leaders play when such sanctions like this are coming from foreign countries? Mr. ENEOJO, are you with us?
Let me unmute myself. Okay, can you?
Yes, I can get you 5 on 5. Right on.
Good. So thank you for having me once again on the program. And I want to say, I've said it all, but I would still have some things to say. You know, they are like two-legged bulldogs. They can wield their hands are entrenched in corruption, deep corruption. So you can't tell me to play by the rules of the game when that is what is happening in Africa. And, you know, there is a saying in Africa that says, when the cloud is gathering, we should be coming down, not that the cloud will disappear into vapor, into the thing and no. And when rain falls, the rain will surely touch people, not an individual, touch group of people. They should come out now and say they are the watchdog of the world, and they want to watch what other countries are doing, that to bring down leaders. Shame on us, Africa, when you are not doing things right. Human resources, natural resources, everything we have. If you remember very well, Nkrumah, former president of Ghana, said Africa for Africa. And to produce what we eat, we have enough land, we have enough everything we need to produce. Let the world come to. But today, when you look at it, globalization has opened the windows to African nations. Slavery is going on indirectly. We buy tickets, we push on our own. And what we go there to do? Meaning our job and the rest of that. When they're developing our land. So if you talk about Alpha Condé, yes, we know human rights violation a lot. I have a book on things on him. He did so many atrocities, talking about the soldiers raping, a lot of them. But why will it take the United States of America 10 years to come out now? There is something behind the myth that we're not seeing. When our leaders in Africa are playing to written to them by the Western world, you will not hear anything. They will give them opportunity to still loot all their nation. They need to develop their country. Then later on, when the person is no longer in power, they will say, okay, that is the issue. Who is deceiving who? Then we need good leaders. Leaders that have the heart of Africa, not leaders that do the bidding of the Europeans or Western. The United States is talking about let us look at what they have, their interests. Multinationals in Africa taking the money, taking everything outside the country. How far have they been able to develop the country where they are taking? We have Chevron in Africa, is in Nigeria here. ExxonMobil, we have so many of them. And they are moving their money in bulk outside the country. Are they developing Nigeria? Are they developing Ghana? Are they Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire? Are they developing them? No. But our leaders, this idea to them. Say, do this. If you want to rule very well, you must be hard on your people, which is wrong. Good leader is not supposed to be leader of the people. You seek community, interaction. You know what they want. You do what nobody will come after you. Your people will defend you. AU is there for themselves. AU is not doing anything as far as I'm concerned. Africa, AU cannot do anything. AU cannot put heads together and say, let us develop, let us harness our resources. From Lagos, Mali to Senegal, you see vast land. What are we doing with them? Well, there is no development. That is how the city Lagos is bigger than Netherlands. But look at how developed they are. Netherlands is ravaged, and now they're enjoying. But here in Africa, you see, season in, season out, flood will ravage the whole nation, and nobody will come out to do anything. So, the US is doing at this moment, coming to fight Condé after so many years, that is probably said something negative about them. That is why they are bringing his dirty past into sanctioning. Sanctioning, it doesn't do anything. He has committed all the atrocities. So sanctioning him, what does he do to the country he came from? He's not going to help any. Money will be looted from Africa. They will open their doors, their windows to them to bring the money over, and they will use the money for their development. And when such person is against them, they'll say, okay, we are repatriating the money, and half of the money will be repatriated, and they'll give them condition attached to their money. What do you want us to do? It is good for our leaders when we are going to the polls. Let the masses vote for someone who has credibility, someone who has the heart of the people, someone who is ready to be a leader and not a dictator. Yes, we know government has so much money flowing here and there, but the paraphernalia in the offices, in these big offices, is making them to run after when someone just doles out little money. Can you imagine? 1 naira is $77. It's $777. 1 naira. In 1998, a dollar to naira was 96 naira to the dollar. And now we are talking about 1,000 naira. Are they helping us? They'll tell us and do that. Policies that does not make sense to Africa. And African leaders cannot sit down and put their heads together and say, we have young generation, we have young minds. ICT specialists, we have them in Africa. Look about technologists, we have them in Africa. Look about educationists, we have them in Africa in numbers. But the policy that will drive these ideas, these innovative ideas, there is nothing on ground. So what they are doing, to me, personal opinion, it is in my place, in Africa, in Nigeria, they say, you are crying when the milk has already been sweetened. Or when why should you cry when the head is off? He's no longer in power, he's not there. Personal for him. It doesn't bring any changes to us or Guinea. Nothing. But what I want to ask you to do, African Union, is to wake up to the
Thank you, Mensia.
No.
You're right on, Mr. ENEOJO.
Yes, I'm still on.
You're right on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Right on, sir.
Okay, so, in talking about corruption, corruption is embedded in Africa. Originated from Africa. Corruption was sold to us from Europe, from the Western world. Corruption did not start in Africa. We live in a community where if 1 naira is found on the street, somebody will pick that 1 naira and look for who owns that naira or that money or that good, and look. In Africa, it is done. And when a child is missing, you will discover that they will be looking until they located the parents of that child and return on the road. When you are traveling from community to community, probably 6 kilometers or 7 kilometers, you see people rally around to help you. It is no longer like that. We brought an idea that is not our idea. People sold what is not an African thing for us. They can be my progress. African. Where is, before the colonial rule, where was our system of ruling, traditional system of ruling? It's still in place.
If you can see B, it means you trust C and the rest.
When you talk about we have alternative dispute resolution embedded in African culture before the advent of the colonization, where we have the down and resolve conflict that you think an issue that will become a full-blown war and it will be resolved. But now it's not happening. You see in Congo, you see conflict in Sudan. How can a nation be divided against itself and stand? Sudan is fighting. What is happening in Africa? Somebody is interested in our resources and they must knock our heads for them to be able to take advantage of this weapon of mass destruction. No, we don't. Do we produce jet bombers and the rest of it? We produce no, but they are producing for Africa. What are they producing for? They are producing for us. And if they don't produce these things, they will be. And if they produce it, they must cost chaos in one country so that you come and buy these things from them, and then you go and use it to keep. Leaders must wise up. They must wake up to their responsibility. When the turn of 21st century was come, but now brain drain all over. The best brain are going outside the country. The best brain are moving out. Just what Simon Nkrumah of Ghana was lamenting in the past. Read his book, you see. He predicted what he said it. At the time will come that Africans will be taken on their own willingly, go on slave. And that is what is happening. So what are we talking about?
Okay, Mr. ENEOJO, I shall be coming back to you. Mr. ENEOJO, sorry to cut you short. I shall be coming back to you, but there's this very pertinent question I would like to ask before we proceed. Mr. Njilukas, are you with us?
Yep.
Okay, there is this, I don't know if there is a link between foreign interference, because listening to Mr. ENEOJO, the West actually always does something on the African continent where they do have something to benefit from it. Now, could we create a link between foreign interference and the system of governance, most especially in Western Africa?
Firstly, we need to put the things the way they are. Talking about foreign interference, it will be very difficult to openly say it is foreign interference.
Yeah.
Because it is all about the game of interest, and it must be done with in complicity with other persons on the ground. Permit me bring out this to you that in May, when the Attorney General decided to put out an official information alleging the crimes which was committed by Alpha Condé at the time, it is said that you have complicity in murder and assault to destruction of property. In a nutshell, these are his charges. And when you have these charges in place, we will have to go back to look at the United Nations Human Rights Declaration to see which one now comes in. When you talk about murder, once it is a right violation, it cannot be foreign interference. At this moment, the United Nations countries who are member to the UN under normal circumstances have to come in. If you talk about assault and destruction of property, these are all right abuses.
Yes.
And once this is committed, whether it is Mr. Nji from Cameroon, once I identify these things, I can write to the United Nations on these things. You know, the UN, the way the UN works is that the UN relies on countries, and especially countries that are formidable to enforce its resolutions. And the United States in this case is one of the countries. Secondly, we should understand that with the Bretton Woods institutions in place, it makes it very accessible. It facilitates the interference of the West, especially the United States, in most affairs, especially in the world, because they will always want to look at how they can secure their interests first. So, foreign interference can only be effective when there is home assistance. These persons cannot actually carry out these sanctions without any home assistance. Of course, they are the ones to understand which particular document, which particular asset you have in their country, and you will be the ones to open up to them, and for these guys to know. So this is actually happening with the support of the government, the home government. It is actually happening with the support of the home government. So this is where we say that the home country, or the country of the perpetrator, or the country of the alleged person, which in this case is Alpha Condé, facilitates that to happen, because we know that it is only from within the members of the said government that you can understand which particular property is in the West, which is not in the name of these persons, because of course we have assets that some of these guys have in the West and they are not in their name. And since everything within this sanction centers on the freezing of their assets and the banning or the travel embargo, it becomes very difficult. And I want to say that there are certain things that once they are put, you have NATO member countries are quick to also support and enforce these things. Because as it is, the United States seldom would sanction you and Great Britain will not or support the idea, or France will not support the idea. Or if you look at the case, especially within the case of Guinea, where so many things are actually happening right now, and most of these guys, what we know for sure in Guinea is that they are struggling to see that they recover all that Alpha Condé had looted, or all that Alpha Condé did embezzle and saved abroad. So this is where we can openly say that no, the United States to an extent is not actually interfering. What I am looking at is, why should it be the United States to say it, and why is the United States saying it now? Because it is the issue of the United States being the one saying it, and the time they are saying it, that makes it fishy. That makes it somehow to be not something that we should appreciate or accept it. Maybe let me get back to you. Let me relocate, please.
Okay, no problem, sir. I'm going to proceed with you, Mr. ENEOJO. Having listened to what Mr. Njeluke said earlier, he cited something that all these investigations or sanctions coming in from the United States are not done without the accordance of the home government, so to say. Now, the home government here is Guinea-Conakry and Mali. That is with the former president Alpha Condé and Karim Keita. Now, as a conflict resolution expert, do you see light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to amends in issues like this?
Let me make a comment on what my co-discussant said earlier. There is no way the United States of America or Western world will wake up and say they want to sanction or someone giving them an information that is very vital or key to what they are looking for. We know they are the land. And the collaborators are like whistleblowers. They get something in return. So what bring back as the loot of such individuals will go to the whistleblower in Africa. That is what we do. It's like carrot and stick approach in complete. You know you want to resolve an issue. You need to give something to this person, or you need to get something from it. That is what the Western world is doing. And to answer to America, and why now? Why United States of America? Is because they are the world leader. That is what they are doing. They believe they are the one taking the contributor to NATO and also to UN. When they decide to withdraw their support to NATO and the two organizations can stand on their own. And UK say no, but UK will do anything, something if America say yes, because UK colonized US. So they work hand in hand, and spending. There is no country that will not throw its weight behind America. But America does not just throw its money into the wind. It's more than what they are thrown there. But what we are saying is that when you throw something in a place, let it be commensurate with what you are going to do for that. That they are not. And as a conflict resolution expert, I'll tell you that the way to avoid conflict is by sitting on a round table to about the conflict. Conflict does not just come on its own. Even though conflict is good. Conflict is good. It is in the middle of that conflict that you'll be able to. So the Asians, the Koreans, the Japanese, they believe that conflict must happen in someone's life for you to be able. Africans are not learning from our conflict. That is the issue. If a president has successfully looted what belongs to the nation, or you have your own rules, set up your anti-corruption agency. You have bodies that you can put up, investigate. President again, there is no immunity on him. So you can invite him and petition him and do it, not inviting an outsider like the USA. Come and tell you that. You will find out this. It takes America 24 hours to do an investigation, an individual to come out with a report. That is to tell you that something has been brewing. Political system in Africa has been monetized. Anybody must have money back. If you don't have money, you cannot put any political run for any office in Africa. To recoup their money, the money they spend during the campaign period. And when they get to the office, they will recoup the money. And they will spend 3 years getting the money back. Then 2 years they will use in vain whatever to give to their loyalists. So we need to look inward in order to avoid all the conflicts we're having. These conflicts are sources, social amenities. In a community where they don't have one, these people will maintain that impact of the government positively. But where there are no roads, where farmers can take their products or produce to the market, leave the rest to perish, what do you expect them to do? And now there is drought because of what things are happening. Go to Kenya, go to Somalia, you see massive land, no water, no food, raise. They will take to arms. That is the available means for them. So rather than fighting the conflict with gun, with the barrel of gun, sit down on the table. What they have to say and look at it and holistically what you can do to alleviate who are fighting. Nobody wants to kill each other for them to survive, but it is the last option for them. I am not supposed to say that the leader should be able to look at what is really causing this conflict. Because early warning signs in conflict. The signs are there. People are fighting for resources that is not fighting. You see the symptom. The symptom is like onion. When you peel the first part of the onion, on the first stage, that is how conflict develops. We have stages of conflict development. Do we gather information and just throw them away? No. Those are the things for us to become better in Africa. We must look at our conflict. Look at Rwanda today, that they went through so kind of, heinous crime, genocide. And then how to bring women into the political arena is another way of solving so 90%, 100%. No, we must say no to that. Let women be included. Let the way women think logically. They look ahead before they think, before they say so. In the body of policy or decision makers, it's got that errors will not be there. But when men who are just rational thinkers, we just sit now and we give order. But we think before we realize that conflict is there. To resolve all these things is to bring development to every part of Africa, and it is possible because we have resources. Don't have land in Europe. Some of them don't have. They have mountains where you cannot do anything, caves and different things. But our weather is
yes,
dry and rainy season. Even the dry season, you can do irrigational farm now. But what are we doing? Toys come and go. Nothing is done for the past 30 years. If Africans pursue holistic and mentoring the younger ones, a child born in 1991 is telling you he has not seen anything good in Africa, that he wants to move outside Africa. That is because we have been having corrupt leaders till this day. And conflict is everywhere. It is not only in South Africa, no. In Nigeria, there are conflicts that have been so. There is agitation of those who believe that resources being taken from their region in the Niger Delta area. Then when you go to the northeast, they are saying their cattle are taken to arm, kidnapping, and you pay ransom. They'll kidnap you and they say, they tell me that is, they are looking for ways to survive when there are vast land there for government to develop for them. Produce, productive, and we begin to export things from Nigeria, from Africa, Angola, to import outside the country for our youth to be gainfully employed. And we are busy buying weapons from the Europeans, from the Western world. It is not the best. I feel bad. I belong to this generation. I'm not among the old flashy, from federal government, from the state apparatus. Though any president that is coming into power, let there be a declaration of assets. Either you declare your asset or you will not occupy that asset. And when you declare your asset, when you are living on, we investigate. At social time, we know that there are so many things at their disposal. They can enrich themselves. But if there are checks and separation of power, so those are the things we should look at. If the Western way of ruling or leading, if you go back to our traditional system of government, where it is there, it's entrenched.
Yeah, Mr. ENEOJO, thank you immensely for that contribution. We are proceeding, of course. Now, I would like to get to you, Mr. NJIX. Having listened to all this, can we say that this is coming at a time to discredit African leaders, most especially those in the western part of the African continent?
We cannot talk about discrediting them. I think we should talk about it is coming at a time that Africans are craving for the corrector to be used properly. It is coming at a time that Africans are dying, struggling to leave the continent via the Mediterranean and the Sahara Desert. It is coming at a time that Africans are dying in Ecuador, they are dying in Brazil, or in the quest to get into what is said to be the land full of milk and honey. It is coming at a time that young Africans now want to mount the top seat, which is the presidency of the said republic. I think at this moment, we should, on the other hand, praise the move, because what is most important is that these sanctions include banning and freezing of assets, and it bans every U.S. citizen to deal with them. And once an American citizen is banned, for example, it would be good for your televiewers to understand these things such that they should know how effective it is before we start looking at the mechanism to recover all of these frozen assets, and how do we get them back to inject all the resources into the African economy, which in some cases we may want to look at these things to serve as remittances. Now, when this decision comes out, it comes out with the latitude for every American not to deal with you, meaning that any person who comes behind it, for example, Alpha Condé has been banned, and let's assume that NJIX is an American president, or sorry, an American citizen. Now, I have nothing to do with Alpha Condé, and if I have a friend who deals with Alpha Condé, once I'm dealing with that friend, I am dealing with Alpha Condé and the others. Yes. So this is the juicy part of it. This is where we say that should things be put rightly, then we will solve that problem. I want to also, on the other hand, say that the United States is doing some good job. However, is doing it in a hypocritical manner, in the sense that most of this accumulated wealth, once they are frozen and sent back to the people, it sounds good. However, these things are not frozen. These assets frozen, especially like that of the United States, the entire proceeds of it, once liquidated, the liquidity will not be injected in the Guinean economy instantly. It has a procedure for that to be returned to the Guinean people. And if you look at the case of Alpha Condé, I want to say that Alpha Condé, just as Abubakar or Karim Keita, they all perpetrated what would have been termed very heinous to the African continent, in the sense that they usurped the powers that was given to them, including the people's power, because Alpha Condé at the time was not a president for himself, but he took the presidency as though it was his presidency. That was the presidency given to him by the people of Guinea. It's the same thing with the Keita. At the time when Keita was actually serving as the president of the president and the Defense Commission of the National Assembly in the Malian within the Malian Republic, most of these things, they sounded quite good. Howbeit, a lot was not done the way it ought to have been. So, in this case, it is coming at a time that Africans are truly in need of it. If you look at the number of young Africans struggling, I was reading the papers this morning, then I understood that some Africans, I think it should be one of the within one of the African countries, was found dead. About 28 young persons were found dead, and it is alleged that they suffocated and died because they were struggling. Some traffickers trafficked them to take them to the Europes and the Americans, and somewhere along the line they were now caught in a vehicle, in a van that never had ventilation. There was no air, they could not breathe, so they suffocated and died. And these are things that many Africans, we keep seeing, struggling to leave the African continent because they think that the bed of roses lies in the West. On the contrary, the resources that Africa produces to give life to the West, African leaders have decided to put it beneath their feet, and they are pinching it in bits. Why Africans look at it as though they are doing them some good. And the West, and especially the United States, is involved in some of these things. Like my brother there said from Nigeria, the Chevron company is involved. There are American companies, oil companies that are involved in this. And these multinational companies, under normal circumstances, they are the intermediary. They are the person that most of these African presidents would use to siphon, to subject their fellow citizens to pain, torture, and penury, to make them always appear as though their pecuniary conditions is not something that they should complain about, whereas it is the case. So I think that it is time for Africans to come back to the drawing board. And how do we go back to the drawing board? How can we move back to this drawing board? Young Africans, old Africans, it is time for us to sit up and ask ourselves these questions. Do we elect leaders that should defend the interests of the people, or we go about celebrating people who are capable of giving us our own beat, that once they are injected perhaps in our coffers, and we celebrate them and we convince others to ensue? And we also have to ask some of these embassies within some of these African countries. For example, are we asking the American embassy in Guinea, what exactly were they doing from the moment Alpha Condé had to go in for a referendum that favored him to get a controversial third term to serve as the president? The first tenure, we know what happened. The second tenure which he got, we know how it happened. The third controversial tenure, we equally know how it happened. And how involved were some of these persons. They will not be interfering. What is global? We have to fight it globally. Yes, I know some people may want to think that it is interference. No, it is not interference. When we talk about human rights violations, it is a global fight. When we talk about terrorism, it is a global fight. When we talk about corruption, it's a global fight. Now, when you corrupt, when you embezzle, you have violated the people's right to sometimes good health, and you have abused power. And under normal circumstances, we have to fight against these things. And I think this is where young Africans, on the other hand, find pleasure in exiting the continent for what they term greener pasture, thereby giving some of these persons I'll call thugs, some of these white elephant thugs, because they come in as persons who are taking...
Permit me to cut you short. Due to time constraint, we are gradually coming to the end of today's edition, and I might like to also give the floor to your co-panelists. Wrap up, sir.
Yes. So I think
Mr. ENEOJO, I shall be coming back to you. Let Mr. NJIX close his conversation, of course, his remarks. Then I shall give you the floor.
Yes. So I was saying that everything lies in the hands of the Africans. The human rights abuses that are taking place daily, we condone to it. Yes. If we say no to it, they will not happen. The barriers are not the things that we should use in settling certain things. Howbeit, we should use the ballot boxes. The education is going wider. And I want to say that to the young Africans on the other part of the continent, kudos to you guys, because the education is going wider. The Pan-Africanism is spreading. It is the reason why today in Africa, seldom would you see a leader who would think that he can just maneuver over the people and have his way on the platter of gold.
Thank you immensely, Mr. NJIX. To wrap up with you, Mr. ENEOJO, in just a few words, just like 1 minute, what do you think is the way forward for the African continent?
The way forward is the same things I have been saying.
The way forward is...
Permit me, this question is directed to Mr. ENEOJO ADIKWU.
The way forward is for the youth. The youth to believe in the nation, for the youth to believe in their continent. Come together. We rub mind. We talk about what is affecting Nigeria in 3 months' time. We have a new president. We have talking. The youth knows what they want. The youth, for the first time, are going in mass that part of Africa. We shouldn't allow them to take us right. Have your PVC. Go there. Make sure the leader that will take us to the next phase of our life is elected.
No, I don't understand.
That is what we should be doing. And what we are... conflict of resources that are not there for us to see. Time will not have true conflict issues in Africa, but only 6 that will tell you. That is that people can pay 15 million naira to go and have a certificate DS. There is conflict that is called in ethnicity, where I have to come from this region for me. If one person is there, someone who is from my ethnic background is there. That is true. Or health conflict. There is conflict in our health sector in Africa. That is why you see a president, but you travel, go to UK or go to Europe, in Germany, to spend the tax staying in hospital for a year, while health facilities in Africa are going decay. Infrastructural conflict. The roads, population is exploding, and we don't have roads because there are very few roads, and they don't want to construct the roads. That is another conflict. Power. I'm not talking of power getting to a seat of power. No, I'm talking of power supply, energy. We have one of the best gifts from God, which is sunlight. We can take advantage of that and solarize. Have wind, massive wind in Africa. We're not using it to have wind turbine for us to supply energy.
Okay. Mr. ENEOJO, thank you immensely for joining us on today's edition.
There are crashing on himself. That is fine. But so I have so many that time will not permit us today, but in all, I will myself believe in your country and believe in your continent. And we'll see where we'll get to in the next few years.
Thank you so much for taking out time of your busy schedule to join us on today's edition.
Thank you for having me.
I'll equally say thank you to you, equally, Mr. NJIX. It was a pleasure having you on today's edition of Talking Points. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of Talking Points over your Pan-African channel for you Media Africa. I have been NJIX NABESEH for presentation. Programs continue, and up next is Prolongation Sport. Bye-bye.